Right, Saxo fans, episode 51. Right, hopefully the aim of this episode is to get the engine running for a much longer period of time. So there's a few things that need to happen. Obviously all of the front end needs to go on, so all the boost pipes and everything will go on, the radiator fluid and all that kind of stuff. Might even try and get the pass fluid in and get that bled out. Still got the reservoir to attach to the slam panel, so we'll get all that done, hopefully, that's the plan. But the first thing, before we put any of that stuff on, I'll need to modify the harness. So essentially take it all off again, strip out the things that I mentioned in the last episode. We're going to do that, and then we're going to relocate the ECU into the glove box and hopefully tidy up some of the engine bay wiring while we're in the process. And then also while we're there, we're going to put things in like my multiple map switch. I'm going to have 3 maps. I've got a little switch here to go in. I need to put my wideband into here. I need to put the boost control wiring into here as well. So a bit of wiring to begin with, and then we'll focus on putting the front end on and starting it up and making sure the fans work. That's the plan. So I think what we'll try and do is we'll try and skip through a lot of this with a, what do you call it? Time-lapsey thingy. Yeah. So yeah, let's do some time-lapsing, and hopefully we'll get to a point fairly quickly where we're putting some fluids in. Right, time to modify the harness. So, as I said before in my last video, I have a couple of plugs here that all of these are going to come out. So what I'll do is I'm going to cut back to the first joint, pull those out, maybe then re-tape just in a couple of places to keep it together, and then just work my way down. That's the plan. Take all of those out. Take out ego wires as well. Obviously not going to use those. There's 2 of them. Yeah, and I think everything else then is in use. So should hopefully be a decent bit lighter afterwards. I might weigh it. Let's have a look. We'll see. So let's crack on with that. Well, as you can probably tell, this is going to take me a while. Just strip back the first bit just to hear, so I'm trying to be really careful. So what I'll do is I'm going to carry on now off camera, and I'll show you towards the end, and we'll have a little weigh in to see how much harness we've stripped out. It's a real shame I've got to waste so much tester tape, but I did want to show you one thing. The little tool that I use to strip the tape back, this is called, I think it's like a seam stripper or a trim tool like that. It's really great. It's got like a, try and focus on this. I've actually broken the tip of mine, but in the little curve here is a little blade, and you can run that along the tape, and it cuts the tape without having to damage the wires. So these are really good. You can get them on Amazon. They're only a few quid. But yeah, this will save you sitting there unwrapping all of your tape. You can just cut it back, so it's really good. Anyway, let me cut to the end where this is basically done. Well, I'm not going to spend too long talking about the wiring loom, but I've deleted everything out. Everything that I've taken out is in here, weighs just over ½ kilo. So a little weight saving there. Obviously not doing it for that, I've done it more for tidiness and completeness really, but that's all gone. I might have to extend the alternator wires because they might not reach depending on where we route them, so I'll have to extend that. Took all the wires out and properly de-pin them from the plug so they're not just cut off at the bottom and still there. So that's the tidiest way of doing it. I need to tidy up this little bit, obviously where it's been modified to suit the emerald plug. but I feel like it might be best to do that once I've got an idea about how it's going to go in the car and where the ECU is going to go through the bulkhead and all that kind of thing. So that's about it for now. Waiting for my Tessa tape to turn up, and then I can rewrap some of this and make it look a bit tidier again. But I think until that point, let's have a little think about where we're going to put it through the bulkhead and where we're going to mount the ECU. Right, hole drilled. So it's difficult to show you this because it's properly tucked away, but there you go, look, in the bulkhead, under the servo at the back there. So that's a nice 55mm hole. I've got the appropriate bung to put through. So now it's just a question of feeding the harness through and then understanding what we need to lengthen. So I'll have a go at that now. I think I might hook some of the stuff back up and then just see where the cables are going to have to go. Hopefully it should be pretty straightforward. Right, harness is on, all plugged in, didn't have to extend anything. Alternator wires just routed all the way through to the alternator in the end. No issues with those at all. Everything's plugged in. Jobs are good and pretty happy with that. So now we're on to mounting the ECU inside. I've been and rescued my glove box. It's been sat on the shelf for 3 years nearly. Give it a quick clean up. So I'm going to have to make some alterations so that obviously cut some holes in it. It's also probably in the way of where the fuel lines run. Obviously I've got the bulkhead connections in the scuttle panel here. So I'm probably going to have to make some adjustments to this glove box to get it in. But yeah, we'll get it in one way or another. So I'll do that now and then I'll show you what we end up with. And then hopefully we can plug everything in and maybe try and fire the thing up just very quickly. And then I just want to talk to you about a couple of little issues that I've spotted along the way. We'll sort those out and then we'll build the front end up. Right, so just mocking up where the ECU is going to go. What I've done is cut the back of the glove box off and then just glue gunned a little flap on here just so that I can still use the glove box because this is the way it's going to go. So I can still lob my phone in there, it's not going to fall out the back. And then the ECU is mounted upside down on the top with the plug easily accessible out the back. So yeah, I mean it doesn't look pretty, but should do the job I think, and it fits. It's out the way of all the fuel connections, so that should fit quite nice, yeah, and accessible. So next thing is just to tidy up a couple of bits of wiring, like my boost control solenoid here. These two wires need extending all the way along through and to one of the connectors up by the ECU. And then also I need to put my lambda feed, which is from the back of the gauge, also into the ECU, and there's already a wire there for that. So pretty straightforward, just a little bit of tinkering, and then we'll get this ECU mounted and out of the way, and then I can try and fire it up, I think. Right then folks, a bit of a mission, but ECU now tucked away in here. So yes, nice and securely mounted. The fuel relay's there, which obviously would normally go over where the ECU is. The connection for connecting to the dyno for knock control is there, and obviously easily accessible for the laptop. So, and of course it all shuts away nicely. So pleased with that. Everything's in now, so lambda's fed in, boost control solenoids all wired in. Should all be good to go now, ready for a start. So what I'm going to do is get you set up on the tripod, open the door, and let's see if she'll fire up. Hopefully I haven't cut any wires out that I shouldn't have. Right, Brucey bonus, she starts. Bit of relief, because obviously plenty could have gone wrong. Could have had a pin backed out or whatever, you just never know, do you? So I'm happy that that's worked first time. And it seemed to start nicer on the new starter with the new battery as well, so good changes. Right, next thing then, a couple of little leaks to sort out, which I'm going to do off camera. One's a gearbox end plate leak, and one's the oil return from the turbo. That's leaking at the weld, so I'll have to take all of that off and sort that out. But I'm not going to show you that because it's a bit boring, so I'll do those off camera. But the next thing we're going to do really is aim to try and get all the radiator and everything that on, get all the boost pipes on, the intercooler on, and actually everything on properly for the first time. So it's essentially a sealed unit and is working as intended. And also we're going to try and get the power steering sorted as well, because that's just been dangling in the breeze for a while. And I've disconnected the pump, because obviously the pump runs when the engine and the car is on, and because it's dry I don't want to just keep running it. So we'll get all that sorted as well. So plenty to do now, and I think the only way we can do that realistically is via time lapse. Off we go. There we go then. That is the first time the front end, if you want to call it that, and well, the whole system really, has actually been bolted together and tightened down, essentially ready to run. The next step is to get the thing fully warm and make sure the fan works. Now the fan is a 12-inch spal, and it's been wired in straight to the original VTS wiring. Just literally cut off the old stuff, put a new plug on and fit the spal. So there should be no reason why it wouldn't work. I have messed with the wiring a little bit, so there's a little concern there. So I do obviously just want to make sure it works. But the next major thing really is to get the coolant in. Don't think I've got enough. So what I'm going to do is put the 5 litres in that we've got, check for any leaks, Probably leave it overnight, and then by the time we've done that, hopefully my other 2 litres that I've ordered will be here. We can top up where we need to, and then we can go for a fully warm run up. That's the plan. And then once we're happy that the fan kicks in and it doesn't overheat, we can start thinking about putting some of the bodywork back on and actually getting this on its wheels and driving it back out the garage. So let's get the coolant in. Right, next thing I wanted to just show you very quickly. I mean, I've mentioned it a couple of times in that I need to input my lambda voltage curve in. So essentially the sensor outputs a voltage which gets translated into a lambda, and at the moment in the software is a default number. So essentially this table here, you've got 6 rows, 2 columns, one's the voltage, one's AFR. So when the sensor outputs a voltage of, let's say, 1 volt, at the moment that relates to an AFR of 20, which is obviously not right. So I've been given a curve by Pug One Off, and I've also got the X Series lambda curve straight from AEM. So I'm just going to compare those two and see if they're broadly similar, and essentially just edit this curve by, and you'll see when I reduce the numbers, you'll see, hopefully, if you look at the little chart on the right hand side, the curve's starting to change as I'm bringing that down. So yeah, just a case of going through this nice and steady just to get everything right, and then at least then when it does run closed loop, the lambda will be reading correctly and obviously altering the fueling accordingly. So I'm just going to go through that now and set this, and then yeah, we're basically ready to go for a fire up, I reckon. Right then, there we go. So, I only showed you 2 minutes of that. I ran the car for just under 10 minutes. Initially it was idling too high, so I've turned the stepper motor down for the idle control. So that brought it down to about 1200 RPM, obviously through warm up pretty good. Sounds healthy, it's fairly happy. It's only really when it gets over 50 degrees, it starts hunting a little bit. It's not entirely happy. So I think at this point is where the ECU calibration is obviously not optimal for this car. And I really need to probably seek a little bit further advice on how to improve it. So I'm not going to take it any further. I don't want to do any damage. Obviously baby steps with getting it there. But yeah, it's a shame. I really wanted it rolling out of the garage in this episode, but yeah, I want to do it in the right way, and I think baby steps is probably the best way to do it. So I'm going to do a sanity check now, make sure everything's happy, and then yeah, we'll come back in the next one, and hopefully we'll have this reversing out of the garage at some point, which would be great. Obviously a big milestone. So anyway, hopefully this was an enjoyable episode. Yeah, we're getting there, aren't we? Well, anyway, I'll see you in the next one.